This is what you get to see when you leave the airport for just a bit and then headed into the city center. Quite a long drive, I tell you so, and lovely scenery, but you can't get this angle because you'll be on the ground, and so it's clearly different. Look at that one behind at the stadium. What a sight to behold. Football fans always love the stadium. 26 degrees centigrade, a lovely time to have that kind of scenario. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today.
And a beautiful morning to you out there. That is the stadium right there on your screen, and central to, the nation's capital. Of course, you're seeing there the city gate. You're coming in from Lugbe. Area 1 is somewhere to your left, to your right. I'm sorry about that. The central area is somewhere to your left. It is central to the nation's capital. This scene is the quintessential description of Abuja. Welcome, one and all.
Yeah, okay, so it is indeed a lovely sight to behold. So, yeah, so, well, you just wish sometimes that, but the way they construct our stadium, sometimes you just wish there's got to be close to some areas where there's life around it. You could just stroll in there. You don't have to. But all the same, we appreciate all of that. So it's good to have all of you join us this morning. I'm Chamberlain Usop.
I'm Kayla Megwa.
So quite a number of things playing itself out yesterday, some of which we will be taking a look at today. We know Labour, they held their neck, and then they came up with some resolutions, which we will talk through, break it down as much as we can. They are asking for reversal of the electricity tariff and meet the demands for the minimum wage. That's on the one hand. Judiciary, they're also trying to see how they could ensure that they earn better than they currently are. How do you juxtapose all of that? It's all about remuneration, as a matter of fact. So those are some of the issues we look at this morning.
Oh, yeah. And then, of course, we're going to be looking at justice in elections as well. So it's going
very
to be
important.
Very important conversation. And, of course, it's on the heels of that particular program that happened yesterday. It's brought up the concept of the discussion, really, about these petitions and rascality, which is a word I took away from what one of the speakers yesterday was talking about, the rascality that we see among these people. But that'll be part of our conversation. We're looking forward to that one.
Okay, so let's take you through some of the dailies this morning. All right, let's take a look at some of the dailies here today, and we'll start with Nigerian Tribune. Minimum wage. NLC, TUC say no going back on May 31 deadline. That's a big lead on the front page here today. Look at the riders. Warn NERC over refusal to reverse hiked electricity tariff. Finance, Justice Minister, NJC, NBA, others, okay. 300% salary increase for judicial officers. Okay, so, well, somewhat related there, isn't it? So that's a front page of Nigerian Tribune. And then look at New Telegraph. Poor remuneration. Nigerians suffering consequences of deprived judiciary, ascribed to CJN. I wonder what you make of that one. The Nigerian Observer, Nigeria's crude grades surge amid the Iranian president's death. And then from then on to Vanguard newspaper, POS, anger, frustration over high cost of cash withdrawals, the paper reports this morning. And then some of the riders, as operators gradually take over banks' ATM function, customers relate sad experiences in states. Banks sell cash to us. Delta POS operator. So, isn't that supposed to be against rules? Banks selling that? Okay. Daily Independent, Rivers crisis. Don't set Niger Delta on fire. Jonathan tells Wike Fubara, urges ceasefire, says they must work for Rivers' interest. Nigerian News Direct also continuing on that theme. Wike Fubara feud. Jonathan calls for ceasefire, says Rivers State unrest will destabilize Niger Delta as Fubara vows to deliver Trans-Calabari Road before leaving office. That's what you also see right there on the front page this morning. Business Day, telcos thirst for local banks grows as loans up 200%. The Guardian is next. School feeding of 10 million kids. FG in dilemma as inflation spikes meal budget to 540 billion naira. And then they give us a table of all of that, from pepper, beans, spaghetti, all of those costs on the front page of The Guardian here today. Blueprints. Judges stand for God on earth. Mustn't bow to public opinion. Ascribed to the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Fagbemi Edun others back 300% salary increment for judicial officers. Then they also have this bit here. Wike Fubara Field can destroy Niger Delta. Jonathan warns. That's Blueprint. Have a look at the Abuja Inquirer. Tension high as soldiers camp at Banex Plaza. So all of that featuring on the front page of the dailies today.
Okay, well, those are the headlines that we have this morning. I'm going to take the Vanguard, because there's quite a number of headlines here from the Vanguard that we think we should look at. Anger, frustration over high cost of cash withdrawals. That's on page 5 of the Vanguard. And I think I share these sentiments as well. But you can read more on page 5 there. Operators are gradually taking over banks' ATM functions. Customers are relating their sad experiences in the States. And then we're seeing in Delta State, a Delta POS operator says banks are selling cash to them. That's something that needs to be looked at.
That's not supposed to be right.
That's not right. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. And it's not right. That shouldn't be happening. Anyway, so we're seeing that. But quite a number of other headlines there from the same Vanguard newspaper. Of course, everyone is talking about former President Goodluck Jonathan asking everyone to sheathe their swords in River State, de-escalate tensions in the place so governance can actually happen.
You know, yeah, the same way that Nigerian News Direct also made it their big lead. And it's one of the most sensible things one of the leaders there has said, or any leader has said about this scenario. Ever since all of that blew up out there, because almost when you turn to they pitch their tens left and right, not forgetting that the average person in that state just wants to go about their businesses and their livelihood peacefully.
It is the example of politics getting in the way of governance.
Which is, and well, should we say surprisingly or unsurprisingly? But I mean, it's politicians themselves too who threw themselves, but you have several people too who have said, no, it mustn't be like that. And for those who seem to have been shouting loudest, externalities, those who are watching from behind the scenes, but they should also remember the big question too, much as he said this, will they listen?
Will they listen? There was a truce, remember? I keep trying to go back to that. There was an 8-point truce at the president. Something to, although many people have said, this solution wasn't going to work anyway. Some people have even said some of it is against the Constitution. But, if the president was able to wade into this matter, get everybody involved, come on, let's work together, and it didn't work. How is it going to work?
But from what the president has said, former president, it appears as though we have maybe a sneak peek, an idea of what the bone of contention is. When he said, you can't have 100%. Something in that regard. So, who knows?
I mean, it's time. I think a lot of Nigerians are on the side of former President Goodluck Jonathan here, where they're saying, look, sheathe your swords. We need to be able to focus on governance in this place and get over this, because River State is very crucial to Nigeria's development. And, there's some talk about, the kind of elder statesmen we have from River State. We have quite a number of money bags and statesmen.
Money statesmen.
From River
Money
State.
elder statesmen.
And if there's a way they can come together, bring these parties together, fix whatever this is, get everyone going. Let's focus on governance, because there is a lot of governance that has to happen.
Look at the cost of living.
Exactly.
Do you want anything to make it any tougher for anyone? Isn't it tough already for people out there? And so people are not coming to do business in those areas for fear of who knows what might happen. That's not what you want. You just want things to go on peacefully, because after all, when they settle, you won't be there.
Let's see how let's see how all of that works out. Quite a number of headlines there from the Vanguard. If you want more on the Goodluck Jonathan story, you can go to page 12 of the Vanguard newspaper. What are you looking at?
Well, almost everything here just sticks out to you. You keep asking questions. Is it from the remuneration to the premium motor spirit and what needs to be done about that? Meaning people asking questions as to are we going to have a monopoly in that regard, to what extent, to Lagos shutting 840 event centers. And then the case about cyberbullying, which I saw inside one of the papers here, another important scenario. But, well, for me, what sticks out is part of what we'll be focusing on this morning. So I'll just hang on a little bit while we go for that. But you haven't mentioned what's going to happen today. What do we expect today?
Well, yeah, we have quite a number of things going on today in the nation's capital. Let's see if we can start off showing off some of the things happening today. Very important protest. I think that protest should be on right now.
Oh.
It was supposed to start at 7 a.m. this morning. We have our correspondent, Lucky. I saw him rushing there this morning. There's supposed to be a nationwide protest by retired police pensioners. What the details are, we will find out what's happening to them. Are they not getting their monies? Are they unhappy with the monies that they're getting? What is the story? We'll be getting you the details of that in the course of today. So nationwide protest, we hear it was supposed to start at 7 a.m. this morning. So probably ongoing right now.
Okay.
And next happening today, we have the Monetary Policy Committee will be meeting today. The MPC media briefing will be today. The last time this meeting happened, the lending rate was increased, and many people are speculating that it might increase again, but the live crew is there. We're going to be giving you this one live from the CBN headquarters right here in Abuja. So markets are bracing for this rate announcement today. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed on that one, but we'll let you know what the figures are.
Lucky's already, his materials are filtering in. The policemen are already protesting. They came from different chapters, so they're in Abuja. They're asking that they have several months of unpaid pensions, and then the retired police officers, they're under what he said they are the contributory pension scheme. But he then says that they are also asking that the federal government remove them from the contributory pension scheme because they've not been getting their due.
Okay, so they're coming from the state chapters.
So
I see.
They all converge.
Several months of unpaid pensions, and they're saying they're lamenting the untold hardship being suffered by their members. That's something that everyone is going through, but over the failure of PENCOM to pay them their entitlements. That's a very serious one over there. We'll be giving you the visuals of that. I think we have some visuals coming in. We'll be giving you those visuals in the course of today. But what do you make of this situation,
Well, it's very sad. I mean, naturally, these are the kind of imagery that people see, and then they say to themselves, is this what I'm going to face when I, retire? So why don't I, quote unquote, help myself so that I don't find myself in these kind of situations? So systemic challenges, they need systemic approach to solutions. But we'll talk about a number of issues when we return in a moment, so don't go away. All right, welcome back to Sunrise Today. Yes, we did tell you quite a number of events played out yesterday, some of which have huge significance to what you do moving forward. But first, we've got Mr. Kingsley Odo here with us. He's a former SA to the Minister of Power, the immediate past Minister of Power. He's the GMD and CEO of Plentrix Energy Group. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
Good morning.
Judges, they have their meeting yesterday. And so, but of course, you know the impression people have about judges, elections, particularly the last elections. Oh goodness, they were all over the place. Even on the social media, the online, there were different perspectives as to what people thought about the judgments and how it turned out. So I'll let you listen to this. The President of the Court of Appeal, she was speaking about perhaps what needs to be done in that regard.
We want to learn from our errors. We want to discuss what we found as wrong with our legislation pertaining to elections. Having experienced it, having tried to apply the provisions,
We know that when the election...
So with this, you could break it into several bits. So it's not just for lawyers to speak now, because look, lawyers will do what lawyers do because they are the inner circle. But in terms of justice being seen to have been done, that's where regular people like us come in. So as someone who also from the outside looking through, because they say they want to learn, of course, it has to be feedback. What do you make of all of this?
Chamberlain, thank you for this question. Nigeria is truly work in progress from many perspectives, right? So if we look at what had transpired in justice system right before election, after the election, and the things that played out, it means that there is a whole lot of work that needs to be done. I think they know, and they're admitting to the fact, they admit that, look, there have been challenges, and they need to look into the system, work on themselves. I heard what you said now. It's critical that they know that there were all kinds of stuff, you know, ranging from what happened yesterday. I heard that the remuneration for judges had been quite a challenge in the last 16 years. I think that's a recipe for disaster. When people are not properly remunerated and then you want them to... And I also heard you saliently saying, I mean, people would now make efforts to try to see how they can help themselves by reason of the challenges. So we need to first backtrack, look at the entire system, ask ourselves, are we doing what is right to the judges and all the people who work, I think the clerks and all of those who work in the court systems or in the justice system of this country? We need to deal with that. The second thing is that we need to begin to also deal with the criminality in this country. There's so much criminality in this country. And so if we don't have a way of properly monitoring and evaluating processes, outcomes and feedbacks, then we're always going to have to come back in these loops of people challenged, justifying whatever they do. And we've got to be courageous in fixing this country, Chamberlain.
You know, there was something that happened some time ago, a while ago, when former President Jonathan, I think, did he just come into office, but he was thereabouts. And then it was about appointment of who has the Independent National Electoral Commission. And there was a lot of uproar from citizens, and they thought, no, we needed a lot of independence. We just don't want your lackeys, government lackeys, pulling the strings here and there. And he just, okay, go ahead, from what we heard. Bring whoever, and that's how Professor Jega came on the saddle. People want that independence. We've had several lawyers who've come here and told us, identified part of the challenges they think should be addressed in the judiciary is the way judges and judicial officers are appointed and remunerated, in terms of it coming from source and then they deciding who ascends. Because if that were not the case, you could remunerate them all you want, but insofar as...
Then we need to, again, rework the process. And independence means that it's not by just coming from outside to select somebody, but a process that had gone through some levels of iteration, some levels I think more of the iteration to see that the best candidate is who sits on that seat. Once that happens, I think
what do you think is the reason why independence of the judiciary is not, it hasn't happened yet? This sounds like something I've been hearing for a very long time. It sounds like something we've always said every year. Oh, the judiciary needs independence, especially at local levels. So we need them to be independent. What's the problem? Why hasn't this been done, in your view?
In my view, I think the political will to get it done. See, you cannot remove politics from all of this, but you now get to a point where you need to, and all of us must do this. It means that Nigeria is ready to rise. Nigeria has really suffered a lot of hits, and this across all sectors. And so what we then must do at this point is look critically at all our processes, bring up things that will define our growth, highlight them, and begin to tick the boxes along those lines. So to answer you, Kayla, is, look, the political will to get the people to do what they have to do, and then make sure that they do it.
You said we, the people.
All of
Who
us.
are these people? Who are the people that are holding it back? Can we? Is there a benefit that they are getting? Because you know the truth is, as long as someone is benefiting from disorder, no matter how many times you try to arrange the place, the person will always scuttle it. That's just the truth. How do we nip this in the bud once and for all? Who's holding the gun?
It's a good question. But I don't know that. I don't think that question needs any answer, because the truth is, it's obvious that the politicians and those in the helm of affairs, they're the ones who would, at every turn, at every dispensation, or rather every political dispensation, there are a bunch of people who lead us, and when they lead, they would have to put for the next, and on and on. So it is for a leader who wants to really define a reset path for growth, you know, and say, look, you know what, I think enough is enough. Let's begin to reset the country, and let's begin to get things right.
You know,
yeah.
But if, well, some say it's 98%, some say it's 99.9% of anyone who is in any political office. Look, you always want things to go your way. You always want institutions to favor you, and so you might help yourself, you know, going beyond the scope, and so they will not naturally want to relinquish such powers of, no, let this be independent, so they can go against me, unless the people rise up and say, no, look, this is about us, this is about the country.
The people compel them.
You will come and go, but the country remains. So if the people don't rise up and do that, we expect these things to change like that.
Chamberlain, countries that reset build strong institutions. Usually it's not about chaos and fight and protests.
It doesn't have to be in a chaotic way.
It must come from strong institutions that abide by their rules, and also there are penalties for not doing what you have to do. So maybe the leadership should say, look, you know what? Beyond trying to influence,
and they've not said all these things you want them to say.
Beyond trying to influence a lot of these things, Chamberlain, is the fact that we can look at institutions that can bring beautiful and quick reforms in a nation like Nigeria.
So for your sector,
yes,
what would go through your mind if someone were to tell you, okay, look, we have to go to court on this kind of matter? What would you think? Would you be confident that, yes, let's go, I'll get justice, or you will know what to expect?
So it's a good question, very good question. And that's why I said earlier that for every department of this country, that I want to put it in that form, every aspect of this nation, we have suffered so much by way of misrule. I mean, and this government, I'm sure, is doing a lot to try to reset a bit, but if you look at our historical positions, it's suffered so much. And so the justice system as well has suffered. I mean, you cannot isolate the justice system that is in a country that has all of those things. We are all in a system, a community. It's an ecosystem, and therefore, every aspect of this and department of this nation, police, customs, judiciary, and all of this, we all must begin to say, look, you know what? Let's now build strong institutions.
So your answer is that you won't be too confident to go to court?
Naturally, because today we all know the truth about, even the judges and the lawyers, they know the truth about the justice system.
Oh dear.
So
that's so scary.
No.
Listen, do you understand how scary it is for a country to have people who do not believe in the justice system?
That's huge.
It's almost like the breakdown of a democratic system. But I do get your point.
Good, but
we need to get systems and institutions that work. that takes time, effort, political will. Can we get going?
Yes.
Can we start?
Yes, we can. As a matter of fact, we should have started yesterday. The truth is, we can start. And once we have the will, the good intention, selfless leadership, and transparent leadership. Look, nobody says a leader cannot make a mistake, but there are what you call honest mistakes. And then I am transparent, I'm honest, I tell you as is, and I'm running this process in a way that you know.
Okay, so let's try this. Something that happened yesterday.
Yes.
NEC of Nigeria, of Labour, they held their neck and they spoke about electricity tariff, the minimum wage. They were suggesting, they proposed 615,000 naira minimum wage. They went to table to negotiate with government, and government comes up with what? 48,000 naira. Is that a mistake?
Okay, you know, Chamberlain, there are two sides to this. I always tell you that I see the entire spectrum. I sit outside. And because I have had the privilege of serving in some way as an advisor, I have a more granular approach to some of these things. Now, let's look at the global, which is minimum wage cutting across, not power sector now, cutting across the civil servants, cutting across labor and all of this.
Why not power sector?
No, power sector is fine. Power sector is also part of this.
We'll come to that.
We'll come to that. But I say that it's negotiations. So government on its part must be transparent enough. This is where these things break down. Chamberlain, if you don't have the facts, you cannot take a decision. Or if you take a decision without the facts, then you would 9 to 10 take a faulty decision.
So what's the point?
The point is, if government is really presenting the facts as they are and being honest and leaving the path, maybe Labour would say, these are facts, and they're also making the necessary sacrifices. My point, therefore, is government must be seen to make the necessary sacrifices while they tell Labour, because it is tough. The common man out there is really, really suffering. Okay,
but the one we just spoke about now, guys, Judiciary.
Yes.
I think the Attorney General, Minister of Finance, I think the report is that they are supporting the 300% increase for the Judiciary. So if you were sitting just on the flanks and you're Labour, you're watching all of this, would you say that government has come up with the fact and saying, no, we can't do more than 48 or thereabout, and then you see 300% increase here? How would you process that?
Okay, I have not seen the increments that have happened in the last maybe 10 years in the civil service structure. I expect that must have happened. If not, it's a sad situation. However, in the judiciary, from what I read, from what I heard, there's never been an inch of increment in the last 16 years. I mean, it's an aberration. It's an anomaly. 16 years of a bunch of people who have worked. And what are you saying? You're saying that, so 16 years of no increment, Chamberlain. You're leaving room for so many things.
No, I understand your point, but I'm only asking.
That's on that part.
Okay.
Then on the general term, if you're doing this for the judiciary, then I'm sure you need to think that the judiciary or the justice system or people who work in that sector also living in Nigeria like the other bunch of people. But I think this is a constant conversation. It's a dialogue and a negotiation. If government says they can pay 48,000 naira and you're coming from 600 plus thousand naira.
There's a conspiracy theory that suggests that government is doing this for the judiciary because you know that you'll appear before them at some point. And so if you do this kind of things, well, chances are that, who knows?
Chamberlain, it's neither here nor there.
But you just said yourself that if you're going to go to court, that even the judges themselves know something is wrong.
Because we know where we are as a nation. And we're just telling ourselves some truth, right?
Yeah, we have to.
However, that does not mean that it's not solvable. We cannot reset it like every other sector in this country.
How?
Leadership. sincere, transparent leadership.
You see how this comes? It's like the chicken and the egg, which comes first. When you're looking at the fact that it's those in the helm of authority that do not want this to work because they're benefiting from the disorder, and then you also say that the onus is on them as well.
The onus is always on leadership. The onus is always
is there nothing else that can be done? Because you can't expect. It's like if I'm making money from selling generators, that is my business. And then you say we should fix which power sector? Fix what?
No,
so I shouldn't eat because you want electricity in your house.
So you see,
so when you have people that think like that and they're in governance, how can you effect change? How can you build institutions when the corruption is so endemic? We've gotten to where people don't even care if the country is working. Let me take what I can while I can and run off.
Kayla, that is a sad situation. That's a sad position to be as a nation or as a people. There is room for patriotism. There's room for, if this system collapses, this is the only country you have. And that is the truth. So even as leaders, we're all here in Abuja. If, God forbid, if this system collapses, I mean, Abuja, there's no National Assembly anymore. There's no, even this justice, judiciary, all this, everything goes. So the point is, we must all now realize that, look, Nigeria needs to work for all of us to be here. And the working of Nigeria should be the primary responsibility of leadership. That, look, let us start fixing this country because it's reached that point. And so when you have, and it takes one man, really, to say, look, let these things work. And as these things work, you begin to see, because transparent leadership is not far-fetched. It happens, and you know this is transparent leadership. And it keeps going, and you keep getting better. You know, coming out of the woods is a systematic approach and a deliberate approach. It's not something that you want to do and say, so this is the point, Kayla. We all will put our hands on them.
Labour, after that NEC meeting of theirs yesterday, says electricity tariff, they should revert to status quo. And reports are indicating that they're preparing for a strike. They're insisting on the May 31 deadline, both for the minimum wage and the electricity tariff. So, as someone who is in that sector, is it possible to get back to the former tariff?
Chamberlain, thank you for that question, and it's a very important question. We must tell ourselves some truths. I recall that we had mentioned that the system is on the verge of collapse. I mean, the electricity market, the NESI, the Nigerian electricity supply industry, is at the verge. And why is it? Because there's been subsidies that come years that are not paid. So I recall also mentioning that, look, in the value chain, there's a gas supplier who supplies to the generator, who generates, and then feeds the grid, and then the grid gets that power to the end customer. And also don't forget, Chamberlain, that the gas supplier is a private company. It's not government. Maybe government has some interest in some of those, but it's private. The generator is 100% private. The transmission is where government is, because government thinks this is national assets, national infrastructure, we need to keep that, okay? Then you come downstream. Downstream is 60-40, 60 private, 40 government. And government, again, is broken down states, local governments, and all of those structures. So the point is, if you have a system that has 80% of it as private, Chamberlain, how do you know these companies, because they are private concerns, they need to make profit, right? So if there's been subsidy coming up to about 3 trillion, so for the gas supplier is owed about $1.3 billion. That's from what we heard from NERC, from their assessment. That's the gas supplier. The generator, a bunch of them are owed about 3 trillion or so. And then there are all kinds of losses downstream. How can, and what NERC has done is some mechanism to say, look, we cannot let everybody pay this new tariff. So band B to E, they're left alone in the old structure. Band A are people who they perceive.
Isn't that is outrightly discriminatory?
Why does that exist? Let's get down to, because why are there different bands for electricity? Why don't you just supply electricity?
So you see, the Nigerian challenge has given, I don't know whether there are bans in other countries, I've not done that study, but the Nigerian challenge is that the quantum of energy you get by reason of where you are can determine, or rather, where you are determines technically the quantum of energy you get. The truth is there are industries that really require electricity. So industries and prime areas can get that, and they can pay for electricity. Electricity is a commodity, Kayla. You must understand that it is supposed to be paid for. It's a social service, so it is a private concern wrapped in social service, right? So it's a tricky situation. If government owned all the infrastructure, if government was providing the electricity to everybody, then we can say this. But I want to recover my investment.
So it is not supplying electricity to everybody?
It's supplying electricity to everybody in the quantums and bits that are affordable. There are people who cannot pay for electricity, trust me. And so they can't pay more than 2,000, 3,000 naira every month. If you give them, I'm not discriminating here, but if you give them 20 hours of electricity every day, that money cannot come back because they will not pay for it. You will still eventually go and cut them off.
So
why?
If they wanted to get their monies, these electricity companies, the government has said time and again, meter everybody.
Good, we're coming to that.
Why are they not
why are they not
people?
metered? So you pay for what you use.
Yeah,
if you don't
I
have,
agree.
you don't pay.
Simple.
Everyone keeps it moving. Why does it have to be like this?
Kayla, we're here analyzing historical challenges that we've had. At this point, you need to look back. First, the unbundling in 2013, right? After the unbundling, all kinds of somersaults. There was no money. They thought they had money, but they didn't invest. The discos at that point, and so the stories are many, but let's leave the story. Let's put all of them in a box and say, look, we're here now, Kayla.
Okay.
How do we come out of here? You have to be innovative. See, if you want to look back, you can never go forward. I'm not saying don't look back to learn the lessons, but if you keep...
Are we learning the lessons?
Oh, yes, we are.
What are we doing differently now?
That's one of the things. In the various bans for people. Now, NERC had assessed that there are... First, the DISCO submitted about 800 feeders. NERC's assessment was 480 feeders. And of those 480 feeders, 80% of them are metered. And so the revenue stream coming from those metered customers in Band A would, in a way, reduce the subsidy that government is paying by close to 1.4 trillion, 1.5 trillion at the end of the period. Because government has seen the subsidy, it's there, it's staggering, it's frightening as well. So if you don't find ways and innovative ways with understanding, because what I expect Labour, all the unions and rightfully so, because there have been historical challenges that has brought us here. We're here now, Kayla.
Well, you haven't addressed this question. They had CAPME, they had different programs to meter Nigerians.
Okay.
Why
Let me go to each of the programs, right? And the bane of every program had been misappropriation of funds, and that is the truth. So CAPME.
By who?
By you and I, Kayla.
We are the ones I don't know.
by Nigerians. Okay, sorry.
Is it the Nigerians that are misappropriating the funds?
Let me tell you how these programs have failed over the years. So CAPME, after the unbundling, CAPME is Capital Advance Payment Metering and Infrastructure or implementation. That failed. How was CAPME formed? CAPME is pay monies to the discos, right? And the discos will provide meters. So they paid money to the discos. Remember, discos, the initial thought was that they had money, but they've been broke for a bit, right? So monies that went into the discos didn't come back with meters as it's supposed to be. So
Disco misappropriated the money.
That's the first one. Okay, that was CAPME. And NERC then, I think, was Dr. Sam Amadi. I think that's him. And no, even, I think before Sam. No, Sam Amadi. So they scrapped CAPME and said, you know what, let's create another innovation.
Sam Amadi has said CAPME was working.
CAPME
that there were a few things that they were supposed to address.
CAPME failed. I'm a sector practitioner. CAPME failed. I mean, you can go online. CAPME failed woefully because the monies couldn't come back to provide the meters. And Nigerians were willing and they paid for these meters. And that's the truth. Then MAP came.
And Nigerians didn't get their monies back for those who paid to the discourse.
Right.
They didn't get the money. They didn't get the meters.
Justice?
You know,
they didn't get the justice for the person that stole the money?
Sometimes, you know, this black hole situation, I mean, even the discourse, tomorrow, till today, they're still trying to struggle to pay the debts and all of that. So you need to be clear in your mind that if somebody is still struggling to even pay for the energy and pay for the debts that they owe, and this is massive. I don't have the figures for the debts.
So before you move to that next point,
yes,
if the monies went to the discos, they were paid to provide meters to the people, they misappropriated the money. If you're telling people that that is why the program failed, nobody was prosecuted for that, so because of that, you scrapped the program? And then the same discourse at the ones talking about ban this, or what I did.
We must put this in perspective. If we continue to weep and cry that the milk is spilled and all of this.
Are we saying it's okay to appropriate money and move on?
Why we're saying it's not okay, right? We're saying that in that era, when CAPME failed, you must begin to say, what can we do? And MAP came.
The era passed. Multiple things happened afterwards.
Correct.
Where is the person who was held responsible?
That is not a question that I can answer.
I know it's not a question that you can answer, but you have to understand that is the question in the minds of the Nigerians.
I am saying
who was held responsible for the failure that has caused the problem that I am facing? No one is able to give you that answer. It was scrapped. It was scrapped.
So true.
But nothing was done. Another one came. Okay, let's move to the next program.
MAP came.
After
Meter
MAP.
Asset Provider.
Okay.
Meter Asset Provider has had a lot of struggles, and because that was having a layer between the disco and the meter subscriber. So he pays to the MAP, right? And these are all regulations by NEC anyway. And then he's supposed to provide this. So there's been all kinds, meaning because the MAP gets meter from the meter manufacturer, and sometimes the MAP has not paid the meter manufacturer, and so there is no. So there are all kinds of situations, you know. So challenges
MAP
there.
failed.
MAP is wobbling. I mean, let's be honest. MAP is still.
It hasn't delivered, so it failed.
So let's put it in a way that it's still wobbling to see if it can succeed. So
why is it wobbling?
Misappropriation
again?
at some point.
You see, that's the point.
Okay, let's move on to the next
No, before I
program.
move on to the next program. Because, look, these are the things that they happen in this country. And, you know, you expect the average Nigerians who are coughing out money to pay for these things, they should just take it lightly. CAPME failed because of misappropriation. MAP, you say, is wobbling, misappropriation. No matter the program you come up with next, they will do the same thing because they know that nothing will happen to them. That's why they keep doing it.
But government is doing stuff.
Okay.
Are they prosecuting people?
After MAP,
NMMP came.
Okay.
NMMP is National Mass Metering Program, which was funded phase zero. Look, we know the problems.
Is it the one that we also heard that Tom Chap was also misappropriating money for that program?
Which chap now? I don't know about any chap.
So yes, the
NMMP, yes. NMMP, National Mass Metering Program.
Okay.
Right? So that also had its challenges. So phase zero had challenges and phase one could not be funded because of the challenges of phase zero. But the truth is...
What was the challenge of phase zero?
Chamberlain said...
I know! what was it? Sorry.
Wow.
Okay.
What was the challenge with phase zero?
Okay, so I think that all the meters promised...
Misappropriation?
All the meters promised...
So you see?
maybe were not delivered or the meters promised. No, I don't know what the
I know
what the
gentleman was
reasons
suspended because of some of these things recently by this administration.
Okay, so but government has looked at it and says, look, we must meter. And government is, I hear the government is doing a whole lot to meter every home. The truth is, metering is the lifeblood of the sector.
How do we believe that they're doing a whole lot to ensure people are metered?
So when you see the meters, I think you know that the government is trying to do. So government is sinking.
People are paying for. People almost easy to go through the eye of a needle for you to even get some of these meters.
Just believe, because government is making efforts. Just recently, I heard there's a World Bank in the $7.6 billion. There's a $500 million for metering, and that, if you put that estimate, maybe between 3 to 4 million meters. There's also other actions that PMI, I think PMI, Presidential Metering Initiative, is taking to ensure that homes are properly metered with smart, intelligent meters. Once this is done, it will ramp up on revenue. It will create some confidence in the market. And you will know that, look, for any energy I consume is what I'm paying for, and I'm confident that. So, Chamberlain, we're all work in progress here. I mean, this is talking about power sector, which is truly very important. But there are also other things.
It doesn't look like work in progress, because all of these misappropriations, nothing's happened. The same thing government told us about petrol subsidy. Oh, yeah, there were some, what do they call them, subsidy thieves and things like that. Subsidy was gone. Who are those being prosecuted now for it? I haven't heard or seen if I missed it. So these are the things that happen. And you expect people to keep coughing out the money and the high tariff. So now, from what you're saying, it's just you putting it differently that it will be difficult to go back to the old tariff.
It will be difficult because, I mean, unless...
Or that they can't even do that.
They can't. The truth is, why... I wanted to ask Labour, what is this agitation for? In this band, a whole lot of them, they are able to pay. Nothing has happened to a bunch of people in band B to band E. In this band A, a whole lot of them are able to pay, unless there's something we're missing here.
Well, part of what we're missing is it just appears as though the discourse that they don't look disposed to providing meters, because you just highlighted, chronicled how funds were provided, they misappropriated, they didn't provide the meters, but then you say they are being innovative by coming up with a band.
No, this is
because they want to get money.
Let me tell you what Labour is upset about, because that's what you asked. You want to know why Labour is protesting this? Because it is affecting businesses. If many businesses are being billed band A, you have basically increased their cost, and for that, many of them will not be able to survive. That's just one of the issues that's
Labour's issue.
Yes, one of them.
My expectation, therefore, is that Labour would engage the process. You see, engaging the process is a conversation, not you sit over there and I sit over here, but a conversation that works, and we meet at a middle ground and say, look, you know what? This is where we are. This is the situation in terms of debt. This is the situation in terms of subsidy. How do we come to a middle ground?
But you know that Labour doesn't revert to strike as the first option. It's always the last option from what they tell us. They engage, they write. ASU, for instance, they write since when? For how many decades? And so they say they engage, and the authorities don't always appear disposed favorably to accede to their demands, and hence they have to down tools.
So I think that the challenges we've had, Chamberlain, is the information dissemination mechanism that seem to always wobble. We don't seem, because for you to trust me, I have to be transparent to you. And I must have proven to you over time that I'm trustworthy.
Is the power sector transparent? Are they transparent there?
Before now, no. And I'm being very honest. Before now, no. And if we don't also put a reset structure, we're all going to suffer.
Why do you think they are now?
No, because we see the efforts of government to see, look, maybe there is some fresh air, breath of fresh air coming into the sector.
What is this effort specifically?
The effort is metering. I mean, if government is able to really churn out 10 million meters today,
I don't understand what you say the effort is metering. What has happened?
So when we meter every home, the discos will not have the opportunity to give you estimated billing, which they will not account for.
But it doesn't appear as though they are willing, they are on course in doing that.
The government is on course.
If they are comfortable to come up with bands, go for the ones that can get which bank can give you the money, you go for it. No. What makes you think that I'll be willing to...
Are you understanding the whole concept of band A to E?
For those who can pay.
No, so
is that not the concept?
It is.
And I'm asking, why should we have people on bands in the first place? Provide electricity across the board. Whoever can pay,
pay for what we use. Why does
by metering?
By metering.
Yeah.
And the government is.
So what's with the bands?
So government is trying to do that. You know, let me tell you the truth.
By starting with
once everybody is metered, I mean, once everybody is metered, trust me, I know that this resentment is going to always be there. People are really fed up. People are upset. And these are really...
Because businesses are failing.
Historical challenges that we have had. Businesses are failing. And I mean, I'm not speaking for them, but we have global issues, right? However, if we are innovative about how to solve our problems. So I asked this question.
But we didn't elect a global president or global executive.
No, I understand.
They need to address the ones for which we elected them.
It's challenging. The challenges, we have a country we need to fix, right?
All right. We need to wrap up at this time. We do thank you for coming on. Mr. Kingsley Odo is a former advisor to the immediate past Minister of Power and also the GMD and CEO of Plantrix Energy Group, the oil and gas sector. Thank you for coming on today.
Pleasure has been mine. Thank you, Tom.
Right. We'll be back in a moment with Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Stay on with us.
All right, good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you might be watching from. It's MPC Decision Trading Day right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Today, we'll see what the central bank leadership has up its sleeve to tame stubbornly high inflation in Nigeria. But before that, let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. We'll see oil prices fell in early Asian trade today with investors anticipating higher for longer U.S. inflation and interest rates, depressing consumer and industrial demand. And we see WTI, that was able to rise above the $80 mark. That was early part of yesterday, but now we're below $80, $79.72 a barrel, 0.01% down this morning. Brent still maintains there, $83.34 a barrel, also down 0.01%. So investors still trying to assess what's happening with supply and demand issues right there. But both benchmarks fell less than 1% as the U.S. Federal Reserve officials said they were waiting for more signs of slowing inflation before considering interest rate cuts. Let's get a check on the FX market now. NAFEM traded on an active note with the Naira appreciating by 28 Naira 34 kobo against the US dollar to close the trading session at 1,468 Naira to the dollar. Below that 1,500 psychological level, 1.89% rise is what we have there. And we also see NAFEX also closing strong, 1.85% at 1,502 Naira 63 kobo to the dollar. Analysts anticipate the central bank will intervene in the market that's within this week. The Director General of the Debt Management Office, Mrs. Patience Oniha, states that the domestic securities market continues to be a primary funding source for the federal government. Mrs. Oniha highlighted this during a key presentation to stakeholders where she detailed the funds raised to date through domestic borrowing and securitized ways and means. Take a listen.
With your support for the new domestic borrowing and the 2024 budget, which I said was 6 trillion naira, we actually have raised 4.5 trillion naira out of that. So it's not our money. You gave us money, and we'd like to thank you for that. For the ways and means, the last time we talked about how we fund it, your own money, excess cash reserves. Since then, a lot has happened. So out of that 7.3 trillion naira that the National Assembly approved for securitization, we have raised 4.905. So I'm giving you figures as at Friday. We have raised 4.905. So there's still a balance in both cases. So let's see how the rest of the year goes. But let me quickly add that the Nigerian domestic securities market remains a major source of funding for the federal government, really. And we cannot but appreciate the work that we have done collectively all these years. That's why, COVID came, countries couldn't go to the international capital markets. The markets were closed anyway. But we were able to raise the full amount and even more that we needed to fund the budget. And that has been the case. If you think about it, last year we raised 7 trillion naira, as new domestic borrowing. So it speaks to the size of our market, the resilience, and then the sophistication, really. That's not the case for a number of countries in Africa. Some of them don't have a yield curve that extends to 5 years.
All right, so today, Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee will announce a new benchmark lending rate or retain the last one. Question now is, will the Hawks come out to play again? We'll find out. Join us now is Mr. Bismarck Rwani, CEO, Financial Derivatives Company. Join us via Zoom. Great to have you on the show. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So the battle to tame inflation continues in Nigeria, but looking at the previous inflation numbers for April, is it enough to tilt the MPC dovish?
Well, I think we are only speculating. The point is that the MPC is likely, and I use the word likely, to increase interest rates by at least 100 basis points. Why are they doing this? Because the lag between when the policy measures were taken 2 months ago and now, we've not seen the full impact. But what we've noticed, though, is that the rate of inflation increase has actually slowed. In other words, the rate of inflation is actually increasing, but at a slower pace than it was earlier. If it continues like this, and if you take into consideration that month-on-month inflation is actually declining, then it is only fair and rational to expect that interest rates will increase this time and that inflation will become under control. However, the other things are going to inflation. We notice that core inflation, which is more structural, is actually not, is increasing and increasing at a faster pace. Two, we have the big elephant in the room, which is the minimum wage, which has to be settled very shortly. If that comes in, then your inflation expectations and assumptions begin to change dramatically because wages are a critical element in the inflation equation. So we have to take all of this into consideration. But this is a critical time for Nigeria in terms of knowing the limitations of monetary policy and knowing the total impact of fiscal policy, which is taxes, revenues, and expenditure. That's what you need to see. But at the end of the day, you'll see that prices of commodities are actually, in some cases, beginning to decline because we had actually overreacted in the past. But remember, this is a period when we always call, even though you say sell in May and go away, we also know you buy on the rumor and sell on the news. That's where we are. It's rumor until 2 o'clock this afternoon when we know what the central bank will do. So you can buy now and then sell after 2 o'clock if you want to.
Right, we're definitely counting down to that. But let's look at the Nigeria's GDP growth now from 2023. We see the third quarter came in at 2.54%, while the fourth quarter rose to 3.46%. But we don't have the first quarter 2024 numbers. But with 600 basis points already, with the rate hike already in the first quarter, do you think the MPC have enough data to make a decision at this point?
The GDP numbers are going to come out on Friday. I would expect that by now there'll be indications. The Central Bank Research Department would have had a feeling as to what it's likely to be. But irrespective, growth is a fiscal objective. It's also monetary policy is to ensure that there's macroeconomic stability and that price levels are not, you don't have an overheated economy. Having said that, there are other variables that go into this macroeconomic equation, including unemployment. And so we are, for now, the MPC will be focusing mainly on price stability, looking at money supply growth, looking at the exchange rate impact and pass-through effect on domestic prices, and seeing whether the banking system is able to withstand the shocks of higher interest rates. That will be the focus. The GDP numbers are still there, they're in the rear mirror, but they are not the major and primary goal of central bank in Nigeria today, because the central bank has said categorically that our goal is to ensure that there's price stability and also to carry out orthodox monetary policy, not unorthodox monetary policy. That's what you're looking at.
All right, let's look at another issue before this MPC at this time, the Naira. See, it gained yesterday. Is it the CBN's interventions from last week, about 3 interventions we saw from the CBN playing into this week?
No, I'm not sure. I think that there's a lot of expectations, false expectations for that matter. Some say that the central bank is intervening to ensure that the currency doesn't go across a particular level, especially where there's a 1-year anniversary of this administration. So it has to look good. But at the same time, we are seeing that the parallel market is trading at about 1,500, which is not bad compared to where we were about a quarter ago. So I don't think trying to speculate on the exchange rate and trying to catch a falling knife more or less is going to do anybody any good. The truth that effective demand for foreign currency in Nigeria puts the fair value today at about 1,400, 1,500. And that's the range in which we'll be trading for now. But what you must bear in mind is that the difference between the parallel market and the official market, which used to be as wide as 25, 30% in the past, is now as narrow as 1%. So that's fair enough. Also, the backlog of some of those, the arrears are being settled gradually. And fairly, I think that the important thing is that there's no supply of dollars in the market to the point that it can make the Naira begin to appreciate. If you know, what we are seeing today, oil sales are down because we've actually pre-sold some of our oil. Diaspora flows and hot money that are coming in, foreign portfolio investment flows are disappearing. So it's a tough one, but I'm not pessimistic about where the Naira is going to move. I think the Naira is going to trade at current levels for at least the next month or 2.
Looking at another sector that is heavily impacted by the FX market, we're seeing diesel prices right now about 1,200 Naira per litre, cheaper than what we're buying in the first quarter. So are we out of the woods yet when it comes to diesel prices?
Yeah, thank God that Dangote Refinery is producing and selling actively at about 1,100. So we scanned the market yesterday. It's 1,200 across most of the MRS and Mobile. Corn oil is selling at a slightly higher premium. But generally speaking, across the country, we are seeing it about 1,200. That is significant in the sense that diesel is used to power generators. Diesel is used to power the trucks that carry food from the rural to the urban areas. Diesel is also used by the bakeries to keep the bread, because you cannot rely on public power supply for the bakeries. So it's a very, very important input to keep prices at the current level. It had almost a 10 to 15% impact, the price of diesel on general price levels. So having said that, that is one of the factors. When you put it all together, you see why the economy is showing some signs of interim stability. I want to use the word interim stability, is that because interest rates have increased, so the marginal propensity to consume and buy dollars has reduced. Because the price of diesel has reduced, then the pass-through effect of the knock-on effect of higher diesel prices on lower diesel prices on the economy is having an impact. Then, of course, we're seeing money supply growth, which is being targeted, and I think the numbers will come out later today. So when you put all of this together, even though your exchange rate is at about 1,500, the question is, what if you didn't do these things? The exchange rate would have been about 2,300 or 2,400 by now. So it takes time, and there are lags between when you actually announce policies, when it has an impact, and when people begin to believe it, that it's consistent. So these are the things that are going in. I think that the price of diesel coming down is a major, major boost to macroeconomic stability in the country.
Right, because I remember bread makers were already threatening about increasing bread prices when we saw, diesel prices were high. So hopefully they don't have to raise the price of bread, going forward with this prices, coming down.
Yeah, the price of wheat Price of wheat has actually come down globally a little bit. So the bakers have been making some money, but obviously they lost a lot of money in the past. So it's time for them to have another break. But having said that, you know the whole thing about cocoa, because we talk about the forex thing. The European Union has passed a new rule which says that cocoa coming from countries where there's no reforestation will not be bought. So today we are seeing the price of cocoa at about almost $7,000 a ton. And Ghana and Ivory Coast have actually announced 55% increase in the prices to their domestic farmers. There's a lot of instability, but for Nigeria, we're expecting to do 250,000 to 300,000 tons this year. And if that happens, you could see that cocoa inflows into the forex market could be significant. And the average quality of life and income per capita in the cocoa producing areas of Osun and Ondo State and all the way to Akwa Ibom, you will see that the average income per capita there can be much, much higher than even in the oil producing area. So again, back to the basics, back to the future. We're going back to the old raw materials, and we are benefiting from integration with the global markets. And that's a welcome development, which I have not heard it being announced or discussed publicly in this country. It's a major development and having an impact not only on our forex exchange rate, but on the quality of life of the farmers in the rural areas of Nigeria.
And looking at the new rules from the EU, definitely is to discourage deforestation, at this time. Do you see the major exporters now complying, with afforestation at this point so that they, get those cocoa pods out?
I think so. We're already seeing that happen, partly in Edo State where there's a reforestation program. They're trying to get trees back. It solves two things. One is, apart from the ESG rules of the European Union, you know that your aridity and the global warming issue is affecting Nigeria dramatically. And part of the banditry and all of these things that are being discussed, it is time that we do this, not just because the European Union is saying so, but we are doing it because it is in our own best interest to ensure that the ESG goals or sustainability principles are addressed. We are seeing that with the compressed natural gas initiative, the electric vehicle initiatives, the lithium initiatives. There are a lot of those things. So this only makes it more compelling that a country like Nigeria has to, one, grow, but also grow sustainably in such a way that it doesn't damage to the environment, and it also helps us to capture some of the benefits which the European Union, the United States, Latin America, and Asia are offering for environmentally friendly policies in the third world.
So do you see a big hit to Nigeria's cocoa revenue with this new rule?
No, the rule doesn't kick in till December 30. That is 2025. That is December 30, 2024 into 2025. Already, the major manufacturers of chocolates, Nestle and Mondelez, are already saying that their revenues are going to be at the hit. And but there are so many issues. I think Nigeria benefits because Nigeria had not fully pulled, not actually exploited fully its cocoa potential. Ghana is doing 1 million tons a year. Ivory Coast is doing about 2.3 million tons a year, and Nigeria is doing a miserable 250,000 tons a year. We could easily scale up to about 500,000 tons. But you know that the variance of cocoa that you plant takes about 5 years, right? And what we're seeing, people have cut trees down to plant cocoa, and cocoa does not help the environment in terms of global warming. So we need to go and plant some more trees in the non-cocoa producing areas, so the country benefits from these initiatives, and also the global warming issue, which is affecting us both, especially in the bread basket of the Benue State and Kogi State, begins to actually we're going to get the benefit of that in the food bread basket of Nigeria.
All right, I guess it's time to plant more trees going forward this time. Thank you so much. It was great having you, Mr. Bismarck Ruane, CEO, Financial Derivatives Company.
Thank you for having me.
And the theme of the day is still about interest rates at this point. And now we're going to find out the impact of high interest rate environment for startups and fintechs and how they're navigating that environment right here in Nigeria. Joining us now is Dr. Babatunde Obrima, is COO, Fintech Association of Nigeria. Joining me via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So talk to me about how, this high interest rate environment is impacting, fintech startups at this time. Also, we know that they're still having to deal with naira volatility.
Well, definitely. I mean, inflation is a general problem that affects everybody and affects the fintech. I mean, cost of operations is gone higher, so which will affect, I mean, their P&L at the end of the year, because also, it's a regulated environment where there's a limit to the charges you can charge. So it's and that's why you see fintechs wants to grow the numbers so that they can use that to compensate for the cost of operations. I mean, so that it balances out. Of course, naira volatility is a big challenge. It's a demand and supply, and like Mr. Rewane also had alluded to, I mean, supply is low, demand is high, so it's a big challenge. I think that we all need to protect the naira and start to change some things that we do, the habits, dress. I think let's dress Nigeria. I think that let's, instead of buying the $1,000 suits. So I think that it's a huge challenge for us at fintechs, at the fintech ecosystem. Cost of operations it's high, and we hope that the NPC will do something that will help to, reduce inflation. I mean, as we all know, it's the whole idea of increasing interest rate is to reduce borrowing so that demand can drop. But I think that works better in a credit-based environment. In a cash-based environment like ours, it's a huge challenge, and that's why the rate of the impact is not as fast as we expect, like Mr. Rewane had mentioned earlier on. I mean, while you can see the rate of growth reducing, it's because, these factors. We hope that with the introduction of credit corp, that could have a longer lasting effect eventually on rates and how interest rates are used to manage inflation.
Right, and talking about, fintechs trying to add more numbers, at this time. Remember the CBN did direct some of these fintechs not to onboard new customers, at this time. How do you see that impacting them in the short term?
Well, it will in the short term, but I think in the long term, it will be better for the fintechs. Regulators have to do their own job. I think that when you look at regulating a digital space, it's at times things are missed, I guess. So the regulators have gone in there and they say, oh, we've noticed some things, we want you to correct these things, but we don't want you to add new ones to it, sort this out. And then once we confirm that you've sorted out those issues, you can start opening accounts again. So I think it's just a short-term challenge that will be sorted out. And I know that the fintechs are all working, we're all working around the clock. We can deal with some of the observations that the regulators have made.
And we know the fintechs and the startups, they need a lot of funding, at this time. Cost of credit is going up right here, still quite elevated in Nigeria. And I know we import, funding, for these, startups and fintechs. So what's your outlook, for funding going forward?
Well, so funding will still be a bit challenging. We could see it from last year. 2022 was $1.2 billion. Last year was just about $300 million. And that's because even the investors have changed their models. Before they were looking at numbers. Now they want to see the money. They want to see where the profit is coming from. So, and they're more concerned now about governance structures than what they used to do. So we're still going to have a bit of some challenges. But even at that, in the first quarter of this year, about $464 million was raised in Africa, Nigeria leading with $165 million. So, we will see funding. But, for me, I always say that it's time to start looking at the verticals. Nobody wakes up and say, today I want to pay Flutterwave, but I want to pay into Switch. I mean, they're just platforms. We pay for food, for shelter, for transport. So we need to start developing those verticals, the agri-tech, the insure-tech, the health tech, the trans-tech. I mean, every day you go in traffic, you see people fighting with conductors over change, or conductors are merging people with change. We can use technology to drive that, even in these Kia buses and all the other means of public transport. So those are the areas that we also need to start focusing on. When you look at the fact that disposable income, 56.7% goes into food, and the agricultural sector is a place to really look at how do we fix broken chains in the agricultural value chain.
Right, and definitely I know some investors on the sidelines have been looking for opportunities in this space at this time. Are there any opportunities you're seeing that most people are not seeing right now in the fintech space?
So I think that the biggest challenge we have in the space today, and not just fintech in the financial sector, is cybercrime. So looking at investors, fintechs who are looking at solutions for cybersecurity, I think that investors will look at them because that's a space where everybody's impacted. Banks, fintechs, and not even non-banks institutions. So people hacking into systems. So it's an area I think that investors should look at. Also, the verticals are areas that investors should also look at. I mean, take insurance, for example, just 3% penetration. So insurtech is a good space to look at. As a matter of fact, NICOM has mandated the Fintech Association of Nigeria to work with it so that we can develop a fintech adoption roadmap for the insurance sector. Although that's a 9-month project, but at the end of the day, we think that it will change the insurance industry strategically to be a digital driven sector.
Right. All right, we'll keep tracking those opportunities. Thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Babatunde Obrima, the CEO of Fintech Association of Nigeria. It was great having your perspective today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so that's it from me on Business Morning. Markets are open today and definitely bracing for that decision from the MPC. That's the third one for 2024. Is it going to be a hike or hold? We'll find out right here on Channels Television by 1 p.m. I'm Ladi Williams. It's bye for now. Back to the Sunrise Daily team.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, just before we introduce our guest, and to bring you some updates about some pensioners, but this time police pensioners protesting here in Abuja. So images coming through. The retired police officers of the Nigeria Police under the contributory pension scheme are protesting over several months of unpaid pensions. Now, they say they came from different state chapters. They're lamenting the hardship that they're suffering themselves and their family members over the failure of PENCOM to pay them their entitlements, they say. Now, this retired police personnel are asking the federal government to remove them as well from the contributory pension scheme. So we'll get you more details on that matter as we get them. Okay, yeah, so as you've seen in that welcoming slide, we do have here in the studios Dr. Omar Brenda, who is a former National Coordinator of National Social Investment Program and also former CEO of NOTAP. Good morning and thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, at this point in time, the government is getting prepared to celebrate, to at least say, do something about their 1 year, mark their 1 year in office. And so, as always, opinion will be divided as to what it is that they have done. Depending on which sector, people will always have their say. But importantly, too, is the performance of the ministers. I know that they did talk about some sort of performance appraisal, and the president at the time was saying, look, you will be assessed. If you don't meet up, you may be shown the door. So if you could start from perhaps a broad perspective, in terms of the kind of impressions you get from lots of people out there, how would you gauge whether or not they can rightly or wrongly assess this government?
Well, thank you very much. I think we have now literally domesticated the tradition of 100 days in office, and then now it's first year in office, possibly the second year until you finish off. And this is very prominent, particularly the first year performance measurement at the federal government. When we have 3 tiers, it would have been nice to actually measure the performance of the local government chairman at the local government level, then the state governors, and then at the federal level. But we're in Abuja, and therefore the hype is actually at the federal level, and therefore we're discussing federal government. Well, I think gauging from where the government picked up, where they started, the previous administration struggled to scale through the COVID period. They too, they had implemented their budgets for 8 years in a deficit, have to borrow to pull up resources. And so this government took over with all those remnants from the previous government. And I think the major indices for people would be jobs, the level of poverty in terms of employment, wealth creation, and so on and so forth. And I think over 1 year, the administration started off with policies that are very, very strong. The first one being the oil subsidy that affected people very, very heavily. And now it is easing off. So when you measure on that level, you have to base it on the benchmark of that policy implementation. Second, a lot of businesses will gauge their performance on the basis of the exchange rate the variation. Again, the government started off very, very strongly by saying, look, we want to normalize the level of the naira, and then the weaknesses and so on and so forth also radiated over the period of time. And then now it is leveling off very, very easily. And so when you look at the ministers, the macroeconomic factors in the country are very difficult to be controlled or to be measured on performance of ministers. But for me, the Minister of Works has performed very well. He's visible everywhere. He's showcasing resilience and commitment. The Minister of FCT has done very well in terms of showcasing himself, shaking things here and there. And you can see the roads in Abuja being scraped all over the place and being reformed. Many other sectoral ministers, particularly like health, he also has been floating policies that are very, very strong. So at this first year, the phase is what I call the shaking body phase, meaning what kind of policies are you floating? What kind of body language are you radiating to Nigerians? Whether you can be able to handle pressure, whether you can be able to look for resources to implement your projects, whether your projects are pro-people, and so on. So it's very difficult to say pass mark or fail marks, but it's preparing for the future, in my opinion.
But isn't the cost of living the overarching, perhaps, yardstick above all else?
Yes, for ordinary people, yes.
Yeah.
And actually for most people. And you gauge that with income. If you travel to Korea, for example, and as a Nigerian with your Naira thinking, and you pick their money and then you want to buy a pack of biscuits, and they tell you the price of that biscuit, and you calculate back to Naira, you leave the biscuit there. But for them, it's actually normal because their income is balanced, and they have jobs, they're paid very well, and therefore they're okay. So the same thing if you go to the UK now or the US, and there's you want to buy shoes, and they say, oh, that shoe is $900. And then you take your telephone and you calculate, multiply this by 1,200, and you see, you say, no. When I go back, I'll go to Aba and I'll get a better shoes, 3 or 4, So this is an internal thing. It's very difficult to compare. But yes, people are struggling with very high cost. And I think that is why the president was very clear to say that I have the renewed hope agenda, and that the renewed hope cannot be fully rated over 1 year. I think it's a gradual process, and we have seen that many of the sectors are now responding. I think only yesterday we were discussing about the compressed the gas utilization of
CNG.
vehicles.
Okay.
Yes, and the president's approval on procurement of vehicles. If there are no CNG, he will not approve. So again, these are signals that yes, people are complaining about the high cost of transportation that affects food, that affects everything. So certain secondary policies are coming to attempt to ease these things, and therefore it's still too early.
There's this thing though.
Yeah.
When prices, when inflation hits, sometimes when people just go ahead and, in some cases, just unilaterally hike prices of goods and services. And for instance, when many of them blamed it on the volatility of Forex. So when it came down at the time, people expected that impact as well, but that was not the case. So it did appear as though there seems to be some sort of gap in terms of price mechanism, some sort of regulation, because in other climes, you know that there's always a threshold. You can't profiteer. But we don't seem to have that here, and I'm not sure if they've identified it or if there's anything they can do at all about it.
Well, I think this is a signal to institutional immaturity. Traditionally, all solid development or countries that are developing take three things, systematically. The first, you must be able to socially activate the system such that people have access to basic necessities of life, massively. This is very expensive, but it's a necessity. When you continue doing that, you don't just stop there. You now go to the second level to create a middle class, give people skills, open opportunities for people to be involved on jobs and wealth. Make sure that the wealth is distributing. The mama put is buying palm oil. The palm oil woman is buying it from a farmer. The farmer is buying fertilizer, that kind of thing. And then at the highest level is institutional maturity, like what you're talking about now. When prices drop on certain raw materials, the price should drop. But in our country, it doesn't seem, once the price goes up for certain things, it either stays there, it continues. So institutions, and we have many in Nigeria in terms of MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies, must respond by regulating properly. People must understand that these variations must also be seen on the other end. When the Naira gets stronger, products are expected to be cheaper. You get what I mean? So, but we're not seeing that, and I guess, like I said, it's institutional maturity, and we have to take our jobs more seriously to be able to monitor.
I want to be able to get your thoughts on something that we started doing many years ago in this country that I think has created a problem, the palliative lifestyle, where we got the poorest of the poor and we started sharing monies to them. We haven't been able to see how that has lifted anybody out of poverty. It was able to feed a few people, but was able to get them out of poverty. And then we saw that a lot in the Buhari administration. Now came the Tinubu administration, and then harsher economic policies that have deteriorated even the lives of those who could even float a little bit during the Buhari administration. So the question now is what's happening to that poorest of the poor, the ones that were, living on palliatives. Are they still getting palliatives right now? How are they surviving? Because, I was listening to you when you were making your analogy of how the cost of things are. The cost of living is high, but it's not on luxury goods. It's on tomatoes, it's on pepper, it's on potatoes. You can't buy potatoes. You can't buy potatoes. I'm having trouble buying potatoes. Talk of someone who's on the poorest of the poor, who's been living on palliatives and now is dealing with all of this. Where would you say that level of Nigerian is right now? And like Chamberlain was saying, the yardstick to check how the government has performed is in the lives of its citizens. Where are we on that?
Well, literally, you are right. Right in the sense that the point at which generally you measure the performance of any economy is the level of poverty. If that is high, it captures all these issues, when you get a percentage, like in our country, ranging between 40 to 50%, it means if you collect all Nigerians in a box and you shake it and you pick 100 out, 40 doesn't have access to potable water. 40 is not eating well. 40 have their children out of school. 40, you know what I mean? So to me, the palliative actually is on a scale of implementing development policies. When you want to shock treat a poverty-stricken system, you have to do it on a four level. The first level is what can you do immediately? And that is where palliative comes in. You can easily say, look, Dr. Bindi's mother, you know how to extract oil out of groundnuts and fry kuli-kuli, but you don't have 3,000 naira to buy one mudu of groundnuts. So we're giving you 5,000 naira, but somebody has to follow because she's not a businesswoman. She's not somebody who is thinking commercial or entrepreneurial. So somebody will have to say, Mama, you know, every Wednesday, we will bring groundnut worth 2,000 naira to you. But every Friday, we are coming to your house to pick all the oil that you have extracted and all the kuli-kuli. So you have to ginger that. So the idea is not just putting 5,000 naira in hands of people and walk away. The implementing structures must have this technical skill to know that when you are doing palliative, you know, you are doing palliative to ginger a system. It is not a dead thing. Yeah, if you give me 5,000 naira, I'll buy something and eat it and sit again and wait for you.
A good thing you have that social investment background. So there's this thing that over time, when this government came in place, the NEC, at the time they said, no, we won't use the former register. That was compromised. They didn't
National
agree.
Social Register.
They couldn't use that social register, whatever reasons they gave. And people thought they were going to come up with theirs. As we speak, there's nothing to show that they've gone through, you know, the whole 9 yards to come up with the document. And that's part of that. The challenge there is when they want to distribute palliatives, quote unquote, what comes across, you get to see them give it to their cronies or just gather people and distribute it. There's no real way of measuring, no credible data that you can rely on and say, I've been able to get across to the poorest of the poor, and this is the matrix, this is the yardstick, this is a reliable platform and data with which you can plan. We don't have that here, so it's difficult to, because most times they play politics with data when we should be gathering them for development.
Well, you see, for me, being involved in one or two of these things, the best thing that has ever happened to Nigeria in terms of social investment is the development of the social register. If you don't
the one they say they don't
well,
like.
I think
no, Mr. Dr. Bindiri was a part of that process.
Yes,
he was a part of the process of creating that register.
Mistake in the sense that there was a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is that the National Social Register, the end there, is not federal. It could have been Federal Social Register. So it's only Abuja people doing it. The National Social Register is a national thing. Every state developed their register. It is the pooling of all the registers from the states that makes it National Social Register. When that happened, I think there were some few governors that complained, and it was purely politics, in my opinion. The thing was that the president wanted to help the governors to cushion the effect of oil subsidy. You remember, 2 billion or 3 billion per state.
That was during the Buhari administration.
Yes. No, this administration.
Okay, this administration.
Yes, now, I think, in my estimation, was that the governors wanted this money raw to them. So they're now discredited all other things that will make them, you know, put their distribution basis. So they say, no, we don't know about any national social register. It is fake. Therefore, we'll develop our own, meaning it's the resources. It is the governors that should be asked, what did you do with the money? Which data did you use? But I can tell you the national social register is still solid. It's on the ground, and they're using it. But anyway, coming back to the major cream of the question is, look, poverty alleviation and this social investment is a technical thing. I think our country, like most people think, our country think farming is for poor people. When farming is what feeds everybody, it's supposed to be the biggest industry. If you're a farmer, you're supposed to be rich. In the UK, farmers are the richest people. In Germany, farmers are the richest people. In America, farmers are the richest. Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer. He rose to become the president. But in Nigeria, farming is pushed to the level that this is a poor person. So even professionally, I was in a school with my children. One mother came and started quarreling. Why are you pushing my son to study agriculture? After all, he will never be a farmer. The mentality is that, look, we are affluent, we are rich people. This boy will never be a poor farmer, poor person. Why are you? So the same way we implement poverty elevation programs, we think it is simple. It is for poor people. When it is highly technical, you must target that poor person. You must know what is the nature. I'm sure you've heard of the multi-sectoral poverty indices. Multi-sector, there are people who, they have water to drink, but they don't have access to food. So it is food that they want. Can you use the water to produce food? Yeah. So it's not flat. Now, we lower down the implementation to anything goes. And therefore, you start seeing people who don't have experience, people who are not committed. And our country, we are used to this islands thing. This is my money. This is my staff. This is my vehicles. So we don't break the barriers. And poverty elevation require partnership and synergy. I
want to be able to talk to you about that because I know you were very vocal. I remember seeing you at a lot of those all those social investment programs back then. How much progress do you think was made?
I think the social investment program had 4 layers, as you know. It had the end power that was to do with building capacity of young people, graduates who are employed to teach in primary schools, to work in healthcare facilities, paid 30,000 naira per month. And we were doing like 1 million. Now, you know, young people. But Nigerians don't understand that. I think they were thinking that there was too much money and people was, but 1 million graduates on 30,000 naira per month, calculate, every month is the 30 billion naira bill, just for their stipends. You've not monitored anybody, you've not done anything. Targeting is key. And therefore, we were targeting very well. There are problems. There are young people that you hire them. You say, go and teach in that primary school. They will not go. They will go there and meet the headmaster. Headmaster, look, give me clearance, right? Every month, my 30,000, I'll give you 5, right? And the headmaster will accept. We face that too. Then the second is school feeding program. Very, very good initiative to raise the nutrition of poor children, to make sure that they is attracted to school. We were doing like 10 million children, right? But there too, there are problems. There are cooks that don't cook enough. There are cooks even that don't cook at all. But that is the nature of the program, to run after these people. There was also JIP, which is the microcredit. Microcredit, 5,000 up to 350,000. But microcredit, anybody you give microcredit, and he cannot be able to make money out of it, he cannot pay. So the subject matter is not distributing the money. It's the technicality to make sure that the mama put is putting. You get what I mean? How do you have to monitor, evaluate, and so on. So all these technical, the program was moving, but you know, the Ministry of Humanitarian was created in 2019. COVID hit, and for 2 years there was a gap. So it struggled up to the point. But my expectation, to be quite honest with you, was we should learn to mop up the little progress and the learning that we have done, and then go higher. But when you chop it down, you start from the bottom, you go back to
and
the
that's bottom. That's what you're saying happened with it. It was chopped down, it wasn't built on.
I think you saw what happened. Now it is on, the whole program is on suspension. Why? Because if you are to pick the pieces, we worked a lot. You know, there is data, schools are there, the beneficiaries for JIP are there. So if you are to monitor, yes, you will pick some few mistakes here and there. It's not the implementation, but that's just the development work. Some people will try to cut corners.
But how does that stand against, you know, when they say it's not just about giving them fish, you know, but teaching them so they can sustain themselves? Was that process a sustainable one, just giving them handouts?
I think it could be seen like that, but it's not. And for me, as an academic and also as a technical person going into this, I think Nigeria has all the pockets and the resources to make these type of things work. Imagine, this country has over 250 universities. These are technical people, young people who are studying biology, chemistry, physics, professional course, but they are not linked. You know, the knowledge that we generate from our research institutions and universities is not practicalized. We don't have a linkage. And some of us, when we come into this program, we struggle to do this.
But many say they don't even see any of such research.
Oh, yeah, but they are there. I mean, you never become professor without research. This is not a chieftaincy title. Nobody says, hey, you are very nice, become a professor. No. Professors must work research, publish papers, share it with to be peer reviewed, and then grow to become a product. So, but these technologies are there, you know. How do you plant rice that can grow in 3 months? How do you do tomatoes that can produce for 6 months fully? How do you do fish that can grow this big, and so on? It's there. But how do you now take this into the communities to make sure that it works? It's a challenge that we're facing. I went to China to study this poverty alleviation. I saw social register there, but the social register is very crispy, very committed. If you make any mistake, putting any, they just shoot you or they jail you up. So it's very serious. I have seen professors working in communities to make sure that the sheep that these common people produce are actually products of research. How do you fatten them? How do you make your feed? How do you, so it's totally linked. I was there.
So how do you link it over here then?
But this is now the strategy. When you start these implementations, you must technicalize it. It is not just an open thing you employ anybody. It has to be a strategy to make sure that you understand the technical side and you also understand the demand side, and you have to put them together technically.
All right, it's one of the areas that, well, you have said, look, there's so many moving parts, all of these things. So in just a year, you can't exactly say this is what has happened. But of course, people will always roll out drums to say this is what we've done. But in terms of how they measure it, whether it has achieved the intended aim in terms of improving the purchasing power, I think the jury will be out on that one.
I think years ago, you remember, Professor Jerry Garner was Minister of Information.
Yeah.
And he launched a program of running around to the states. He will go to the states, see your farms, see your roads. He will gauge the local government, state government, and then he will make a speech. I think we need to bring that back so that clearly Nigerians can see on platforms like this on what is happening in the field.
Yeah, Dr. Omar Binder, former National Coordinator, National Social Investment Program, and former CEO of NOTAP. Thank you for your time here today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Okay, let's see some messages coming through now. We've got some tweets and some emails. We're trying to see which one is the first one. Okay, let's see them. Okay, this is from Abubakar.
Yes, Abubakar Buhari. He says, meters are at the most high. Okay,
very expensive.
They're very high right now. We pay for meters with a phase at over 100,000. It says meters that have phases. He's paying over 100,000. It says it is sad.
Just to get one with one phase.
In Monoka and Nakena says the bottom line is that the discos are neither capable of distributing available power to Nigerians nor have the resources to make power available. Then they hide behind band A, B, C as an innovative alternative in distribution of electricity.
And then this email is from Paul Agbolade, who says, he's speaking about the reviewed minimum wage. He says, considering the ongoing negotiation between the government and NLC, I would like to advise the labor unions to review the demands for above 600,000 naira per month, as this is not feasible and will cause our economy more injury than healing. In my opinion, labor unions should learn from the recent review of the judiciary remunerations, which government may use as a benchmark to review the current minimum wage, that is 300% upward review to 90,000 naira per month. Let us avoid unnecessary back and forth on the ongoing negotiation by working on reality instead of expected or desired figure. Okay, so we do thank you all for watching and for your messages. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Asop. Goodbye.
Have a great day ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa.